So up next, we have a long-time Atlassian, Shihab, telling us about the new features in Jira Service Desk and how to use them to provide a kick-ass customer experience. A fun fact about Shihab is that he's been at the company for 10 years now, and so they gave him a bobblehead with his own face on it. Please welcome to the stage, Shihab.
So hey guys, my name's Shihab, and I'm a product manager on the Service Desk team at Atlassian, and I'm here to tell you that it's all about the customer experience and how you can craft amazing customer experiences with the latest from Jira Service Desk. But before we dive in, I just wanted to get a quick show of hands. How many of you guys are using Jira Service Desk today or have helped deploy Jira Service Desk for a client? Nice. That's almost the entire crowd. Well, you're among the 25,000 teams and counting around the world using Jira Service Desk. It continues to be the fastest growing product in Atlassian's history. Now, this all started with a focus on the customer experience. So for those of you that don't know, Jira Service Desk was actually born about from a real customer need. You see, a few years ago, we were researching what customers were using Jira for outside of software development. And we found that a large chunk of them, 40%, were using Jira to run their IT service desk. There's nothing really wrong with that. Jira is a super flexible product. You've got custom fields, powerful workflows, permissions, notifications. You can pretty much model any business process with it. But as we dug deeper, we realized that there were many key opportunities to build specialized solutions for these guys, the service teams. You know, some were looking for live updating ticket queues where tickets could get routed to the right team. Others were looking for time tracking and monitoring around service level agreements. Customizable reports to slice and dice the ticket data. Automation to reduce repetitive tasks and help scale up the team. Now, this list went on for a while, but the one thing that all of these customers that we spoke with had in common, the one thing that they were all struggling with, could be summarized by this single quote. I've set up the perfect system, but my users, they aren't even using it. You see, the biggest challenge that these teams were facing wasn't really about SLAs or fancy reports. It was about their customers, many of whom were non-technical employees, even within their own organizations. Now, the very first part of the product that we built focused on the customer experience of creating and tracking these requests. And even to this day, it's the #1 quality that our customers look for in a support tool: ease of use for end users. Now, over the years, we've added many capabilities to Jira Service Desk. So I'm proud to say we've got queues, reports, automation, SLAs, we've got all of that. But we're continuing to add features and capabilities that help you craft an amazing customer experience. So in this talk, I'm going to cover the main avenues of customer interaction. So we're going to be looking at the customer experience through the lens of email, the customer portal, and beyond. And each of these sections, I'm going to go through starting with the basics and move through more and more advanced configurations and techniques that you can use to really tailor the customer experience to meet your individual needs. Now let's dive straight in, put your seatbelts on. We're going to start with email. Now, email is the de facto standard of asynchronous communication in the workplace. So it's no surprise that over 90% of contact centers offer email as a first-class channel for support. Now, in Jira Service Desk, we've made it a no-brainer to get started with email. In fact, it's so easy that it's already set up for you, ready for you to test out. Just start typing and hit send to shoot off your very first request to your service desk. Now, within seconds, you'll be able to see the emailed in request appear as an issue within the agent's queue. Now, if you open up that issue, you can see that it's been populated with all the data from that email. So you've got the subject of the email in the issue summary, you've got the contents, the body of the email in the issue description, and the sender has been matched up to a user with a corresponding email address in the system. And if no such user exists, we can create a user account on your behalf. Now, once a ticket's been created, this conversation can continue back and forth with the reporter using email replies. So that, ladies and gentlemen, covers the very basics of email. But now let's move one step further by customizing the email address that your end users submit their requests to. Now, every Service Desk project can be hooked up to an email inbox. You can configure that in project settings under email requests. Now, you've got two options here. You can choose to use the inbuilt cloud email address for all of our cloud customers out there, where we take care of all the mailbox settings for you. Or you can hook it up with your own company's domain and manage the mailbox yourself. Now, the cloud email address is actually the quickest avenue to getting started, but we recommend that you eventually set up your own custom domain to make it more memorable for your customers. You just need to have a few connection details handy and you're ready to go. Now, as well as setting up that email domain, you need to put a little bit of thought into choosing a name for your inbox. Now, when you're setting up an internal service desk for other employees within your organization, it makes sense to identify your inbox as your team name or your team function. So things like IT, HR, finance, facilities. Now, this could save you one step of triage because your customers effectively choose which team they want to send their requests to. But on the other hand, for external-facing service desk teams, it's better to offer a more generic, obvious inbox name that your customers could potentially guess, like support, contact, help, sales. Now, you can manage any triage and filtering using queues and JQL. Now, after a request comes into Jira Service Desk, the product also sends outgoing email based on customer activity. Now, when we created that test request just earlier, one of the things you didn't see happen behind the scenes is that we were sent a receipt email, just confirming that we got your request. We're on it. Now, customer-facing emails like this can be totally configured and customized in Jira Service Desk. And you can find this in the customer notification settings. Now, we've got many predefined rules here that you can customize and configure, like request created, public comment added, public comment edited, request resolved. Now let's take a look and dive into the first one here, the request created email. That's the one that's responsible for generating that ticket receipt. And you can see here that you can control the recipients, you can customize the content, and if you want, you can choose to totally disable this email notification entirely. So that means there'll be no receipt emails generated. But for now, let's keep that notification on and customize that content. Just confirming that we've got your request. We're on it. That's kind of cute, but let's make it a little bit more professional for our service desk. We can start to greet the actual reporter by inserting a variable. So this is dynamic content. So we've got the recipient name, and we can also reply with some context. We're confirming that we've received your request about, and we can insert the issue summary. So that's the subject of the email that had come in. One of our support team members will respond to you shortly. Thanks. And within seconds, we have a tailored receipt email that we can preview inline, which is pretty amazing. But what's all this stuff down the bottom? You can see we've got a link to view the request, an indication of other participants. And there's also a footer. And where's all this stuff coming from? And how can you get your own content in there? Well, in customer notifications, you can edit the template that gets used when any of these customer notifications get sent out. So diving in, it looks like there's a little bit of code here, but I don't want you guys to freak out. Even if you're not a web developer, you can follow how the HTML up the top corresponds to the preview down the bottom. Let's work through it together. So first up, there's the reply above marker. That's pretty easy enough. Then we've got a variable with the actual message content. So the rule, in this case, would supply the content, like the receipt created email, and that would go in there. Then we've got some links to view the request online, an indication of other request participants that could view that request. And we have our footer. Now, first things first, let's change the footer to our own company name, Acme Support. Now, if you want, you can also choose to remove the links that point back to the portal. Now, you might want to do this if you don't want your customers to ever use the web portal. Now, this isn't something that we'd actually recommend, but if you want to provide an email-only customer experience to your service desk, you can. Now, if you've got a web designer on hand, you can also change the structure of the HTML and style up the content using CSS. Now, I'm not going to dive into CSS coding just now, but I'll give you a taste of what's possible. You could choose to brand your emails corporate or something more playful. It's totally up to you. You're in control of the customer experience. Now, all of these customer-facing notifications generated from this particular service desk will follow the style of this template. We've got a lot of these email rules provided for you out of the box that you can toggle and customize. But we also have the ability for you to craft your own entirely custom email rules. Now let's take a look at a specific example. Right now, out of the box, Jira Service Desk sends the exact same receipt email to customers, regardless of the request that comes in. But what if you want to conditionally send different receipt emails? Perhaps a more important request or a more important customer deserves a different level of customer experience. Well, we can do that and much more through the power of automation. You see, Jira Service Desk ships with a pretty powerful automation framework. So admins can craft automation rules. So when a certain trigger occurs, like an issue is created or a new comment is made, if it matches certain criteria, then you can take a specific action. So you could transition the issue or alert a specific user. Or in our case, send a specific email. Now let's work through this example to create our own automation rule for conditional email receipts. So first up, when an issue is created, as soon as it comes in, if the reporter is a member of any of these important organizations, company A or company B, then send an email. Now the contents of that email can be customized just like before, but only this time we state that a member of our team will investigate this request within the next 2 hours. And for all other issues that get created, also send a receipt email, but this time with slightly different content. A member of our team will get back to you at some point. Now, this is just one of the examples of how you can use automation to really control the customer experience. But there's loads more that you can come up with, like automatically asking the customer for more information when insufficient details have been provided, or automatically reminding customers that you're waiting on them to hear back. In fact, we have an entire talk later today doing a deep dive on automation. So check it out to learn more on how you can really scale your service desk with creative automation rules. Now, we've covered quite a bit about the email channel, from getting started to customizing the content and styling, through to controlling the logic for the notifications that get sent out. Now, let's move on to the next major channel of customer experience, the customer portal. Now, the portal is the most used channel to provide service to your customers. And we've seen this from a lot of customer examples. And it has quite a few advantages over just email-based support. First up, you can present your customers with a catalog of the services that you offer. So they know that they're at the right place and they know exactly what they can request of your team. And you can collect structured input about their requests. So let's back up a little bit. Most of you guys, I'm sure, are familiar with issue types. They're all about how you model your process on your internal team. For example, in IT, you might have issue types for service, incidents, and change. But to your end users, these don't really mean much. Like, what's a service issue? What's an incident? And is everything a change? Well, in Jira Service Desk, we use request types to model the typical things that your customers request from your team and map them back to underlying work units, which are your issue types. Like get IT help, request new software, request new hardware. These map back to service requests or service issues. Reporting slow or broken systems map back to incidents, and so on. Now, this part of the modeling process might sound a bit slow or boring, but it's really crucial to getting this right. You really need to speak the language of your customer to designing a great customer experience. Now, once you've got this sorted on pen and paper, it's fairly straightforward to define them in the project settings. Now, you can define these request types and request forms, and if you notice that you've got quite a lot of them, you can actually group them together into logical groups that make sense. But again, these are groups from your customer's perspective. So put yourself in your customer's shoes. So in this case, we've got common requests, login and accounts, computers, applications. They might not necessarily map back to how you model your work, but they make sense from the customer's perspective. Now let's dive a little bit deeper. What goes in to creating a really good request form. Now let's think about that in reverse. I want to share 2 examples of what not to do when designing request forms. Now the first and most common anti-pattern that we've seen is to make your request forms a one-to-one mapping of your underlying issue type. Now this doesn't really help your customers at all. I mean, do they really need to provide an attachment when requesting new software? Have you guys ever tried asking your customers how important they think their request should be? Like, what are we hoping to achieve by getting them to set the priority? What about labels? Labels are for your own internal tagging. Your customers has no idea on what labels to set, so why are we even offering it up? Now let's get rid of these. That's the first step. We have a much shorter, much cleaner looking form for our customers to fill out. But there's still an anti-pattern here. We're using our own internal terminology for field names. Now what's a summary? And how's that different from description? What does component even mean? Now we can easily relabel these fields to better reflect the answer we're wanting from our customers by rephrasing them as a question. What do you need? Why do you need it? What type of software is it? When do you need it by? Now this might sound brain dead obvious, but just a simple rephrasing of this form makes it much easier for our customers to fill it out. We're really starting to speak the language of our customer instead of our internal team. Now we've taken that one step further in Jira Service Desk. We've recently added the ability for you to translate the customer portal into multiple different languages. So if you're offering international support, your service desk can truly speak the language of your customer. Now let's see how that works in practice. Now in your project settings, you'll notice a new language support section in the sidebar. Now this lets you manage the languages that are enabled for customer interaction and customer communication. And this spans both the customer portal and the customer-facing notifications we saw earlier. Now your service desk can be offered in up to 20 different locales. So let's add French and Japanese to this service desk to get an idea of how this works. You can immediately see, as soon as we've added those languages, a lot of yellow dots appear on the screen. Now that means the admin still has a little bit of work to do, because there's some untranslated text that the admin then needs to translate for these particular languages. Let's dive into the French one. Okay, on the left-hand sidebar, you can see all the items that need to be translated. We've got request types, text on the portal, workflow, email notifications, and so on. Now the yellow dot here is on the request type we just edited earlier. Now we need to supply the French translations for all those customer-facing new field names. Now I've got the power of magic move and wipes, but this can be a time-consuming process in practice. Now, Jira Service Desk will automatically translate parts of the interface that are static. But any content that you've customized yourself, you're going to need to provide translations for. And that's why all of these languages are disabled by default, and you can choose to enable them when you're ready. So let's check out what the French translations look like on the portal. First up, this is what the portal looks like for an English-speaking user. And this is a portal for a user that has their language preference set to French. Now you can see the entire portal experience has been internationalized, from the breadcrumbs right at the top, all the way through to the cancel button down the bottom. Now taking the time to design a great customer experience really helps your own team in the long term. Your customers can easily find what they're looking for, and your requests end up with the right team with all the necessary information filled out. Now what that really means is less time in triage and less time spent going back and forth with the customer just to figure out what they're wanting. But what's even cooler is to get customers to help themselves. That not only reduces the load for your own service teams, but it's actually what customers are wanting. Now amazingly, 40% of customers prefer to solve their own problems rather than deal with us, the pesky humans. So it's important for service teams to really empower these motivated individuals to really help themselves. It's a win-win. Now, Jira Service Desk pairs well with Confluence to deliver self-service knowledge articles directly through the customer portal. Now, it's pretty easy to set up. For every Jira Service Desk project, you can pick a Confluence space that acts as your backing knowledge base. So when a customer enters what they're looking for, a search is run across all connected Confluence spaces and all Service Desk request forms. So customers don't even need to know what Service Desk project their form belongs to or what space they need to dive into just to get the solution that they're looking for. All of the relevant results are surfaced directly to them. Now, when a customer views a KB article, we've changed the design so it's shown inline, in context, so they don't have to bounce away to another window or to another website just to read up on a solution. And we've done our best here to provide a really compelling customer experience. But the truth is, when it comes to self-service, content is king. You really need to put some time to figure out what articles you should be writing about. Now, there's no silver bullet here, but there are some different strategies for content writing that we've seen work quite well. First up, and this might sound obvious, but you can write articles as you go, and this is a very effective strategy. So whenever an agent comes across a ticket that could be self-served, perhaps the customer missed it on the portal and they still created the ticket anyway, they link to the existing article, or if an article doesn't exist, they draft up a new one then and there and send a link to that to promote reuse of the knowledge base. Now, another good strategy that we've come across is to write articles as a team based on your collective insights. So for example, block out an hour or two on every Friday, sit with your team, huddle together and write articles based on the most frequent things that your team has seen that week that could be solved through self-service. Now, my personal favorite is just to look at the data. Analyze the tickets that have come into your general bucket of help requests and try and figure out what these customers are actually wanting. Look at the trends and pick up inspiration for what to write about. Now, just like before, I want to share 2 tips on what not to do when writing these knowledge base articles. Now, the first anti-pattern, and again, this is a very common one, is to write long essay-style, in-depth articles that cover everything under the sun. Now, it might sound a little bit counterintuitive because there's a lot of great content in there. But if you think about it, no one actually wants to read an entire troubleshooting and setup guide. Now, even if you break up this content into sections like installation, power, cabling for your printer, no one has time to read all that. Customers come in with a very specific problem, like a printer jam, and they want to know how to get that paper out. They don't want to read through all the other irrelevant text. So write short articles that solve a specific problem. The chances are you probably already have these golden nuggets and gems in these very long articles. You just need to spend the time to mine them out and break them up into smaller articles. Now, the next most common anti-pattern, which is kind of related, is walls of text. Now, these uninviting lines of prose, even though they might be short, make it seem like solving the problem yourself would just take too long. So the customer is willing to try self-service, but they freak out. Try to be concise and visual. Confluence provides a really rich text editing experience, so you can easily add contextual images or a full video tutorial outlining the sequence of steps that your customer needs to go through to solve the problem on their own. Now, getting self-service right pays. Our customers have seen up to 45% of their incoming tickets deflected through self-service knowledge articles. Now, let that sink in for a moment. That's almost half of their ticket load evaporated away through self-service. Now, the last section that I want to touch on the customer portal is related to styling and brand. Now, the customer portal is the front end for your service teams. It's the one place for your customers to go to get the help that they need. Now, in the latest version of Jira Service Desk, we've redesigned the branding of the portal, and we've redesigned it with some thought. We did extensive research before we changed the thing. Now, the first thing that we found was that over 90% of our customers wanted a large custom banner, like a cover photo for their service desk, to really personalize that experience. We also found that with a little bit more color, we could increase the visual appeal of the service desk by up to 20%. And making all these changes, we removed the heavy Atlassian branding to something more subtle. And we also made it quick and easy for anyone to set up a good-looking design. Now let's see what that looks like. Here's the before and the now. It's really starting to look like the product section, the support section within Acme's product website. Now it's pretty easy to configure. Let's zoom in. You can see that you can set up an announcement, you can customize the help center name, the content, you can set your logo, you can pick some primary colors, so you don't have to be a designer to set up a really good looking design. And it's really easy to customize the portal to look like this, or like this, or like this, or even something like this. It's totally up to you. You're in control of the customer experience. Now, we've looked at various ways of how you can design an engaging customer experience on the customer portal, from form design through to internationalization and self-service, and finally branding. Now let's move one step beyond both the email and the customer portal to look at new opportunities for delivering a great customer experience. Now for those of you that don't know, Jira Service Desk ships with a pretty extensive REST API. Put your hands up if you've used this API before. Awesome. We've got about maybe 10 to 20% of the crowd. Now for those of you that haven't started playing with it, I encourage you guys to check out the docs and the examples and the tutorials that we've got online. You can easily use these APIs to effectively build your own customer interaction and drive the Jira Service Desk backend. Now one such easy integration you can whip up is something like this. It's a contact form for a website. In fact, this contact form is actually live on the Atlassian website, and it's used by our customer advocates team to collect structured questions that they can quickly respond to as a team. Now this, ladies and gentlemen, doesn't even look like Jira Service Desk, and that's exactly the point. You control the rendering, so you're in ultimate control over the layout and the brand. And you can use the REST APIs to create the ticket on the back end that your team can manage. But we know that not everyone likes to code or has a development team in their back pocket, on standby, ready to go. So we're really excited to announce our latest channel on Jira Service Desk. So that's the Jira Service Desk embeddable widget. It's a lightweight version of the customer portal that you can embed into any website or web application, just with a simple script tag. Now it's super easy to get going. You pick a request form, you can choose to customize some colors, some text, and you embed this little JavaScript snippet onto your website. Now your customers will see a little question mark appear on the bottom right. Now clicking this question mark will pop up the contact form. Now essentially this is a request form from Jira Service Desk. And as soon as it's filled out and submitted, a ticket will get created for your team. Now the key thing to note is this follows the exact same process as creating any other ticket in Jira Service Desk. So all the same automation rules, the notification rules, everything that you've configured will still apply. So you'll still get that receipt email that we talked about earlier. And after that ticket's created, the customer can choose to further continue the conversation with your team through email replies, or if you've chosen to provide that link to the customer portal, they can view their request online and continue the conversation there. Now we've just recently added the ability for you to also enable request type search and knowledge-based search through the embedded widget. So your customers can find what they're looking for, whether that's knowledge-based articles from Confluence, like free trial FAQ, how to set up a free trial, inviting your friends to a free trial, or request forms from Jira Service Desk, so billing issues, adding a family member, and so on. Now the beauty of this is, these Service Desk self-service articles render in place in context, as do the structured request forms that capture all the right details and send the request off to the right team on the back end. Now the Jira Service Desk widget is available today as a free capability of the product, and we can't wait to see how it gets used in the wild. Now the same APIs that we used internally to build this widget are offered to our ecosystem partners and our vendors and to you guys. Now today we've got a thriving marketplace of well over 500 Jira Service Desk apps, and you can extend your Service Desk through these apps that are available to you. I'm going to highlight a couple that can really help take the customer experience to the next level. First up is theming. Now you've already seen how Jira Service Desk provides really easy theming out of the box, but if you need more fine-grained control, be sure to check out the Refined Theme app for Jira Service Desk. Now they allow customers to create rich layouts and designs without the need for admins to write a single line of code. Users can even create their own custom content and their own navigation items and have that appear seamlessly on the customer portal. Now, as you can see, they've done a pretty awesome job in styling up the portal, and the way they do this under the covers is also amazing. They recreate this entire customer portal experience, the ability to create and track requests using the Jira Service Desk REST APIs. Now, another interesting integration that makes use of these APIs is the call center add-on by Witified. Now, users dial in to an actual phone number to get help, and the app then looks up all the options from the customer portal and reads it out via the phone audio. Users effectively drive the customer portal through their phone call and can end up outlining and transcribing a ticket that the add-on or the app then creates using the REST APIs in Jira Service Desk. Now, another ecosystem partner of ours is Olark, and they specialize in providing embedded chat experiences. So customers can directly request help on a website, and agents can reply to them in real time. Now, they've added the ability to create a customer case using chat commands. Now, the add-on uses the Jira Service Desk REST APIs to create a ticket on behalf of the customer. So a more involved request or a more complicated issue can continue asynchronously after that chat session has ended. Now, the ticket that gets created has the full chat history appended to it. So another agent can come in and pick up that ticket with the full context of the customer request. Now, one of the neat side effects here is that agents can search for and report on these chat conversations through Jira Service Desk. Now, you can also hook up Jira Service Desk to social media through Hootsuite. Now, this lets you turn any angry tweet or a ranting Facebook post into a customer case that your team can deal with. Now, this is just a small sample of what's available today. Now, I really want to encourage you guys to browse through the marketplace and discover really new ways to supercharge your service teams. Now, we've covered quite a bit in this short talk, so I want to take a moment to leave you with some key takeaways that you can walk away with and apply today to really build that amazing customer experience. Now, first up, for email. Make sure that you've set up your email address so that it's easy and memorable for your customers. I know this sounds like a basic action to take home, but you'll be surprised at the number of projects that we've come across that haven't actually set this up. It's such an easy thing to do, so make sure that you take the time to do it. Talk your own language. You can configure email notifications and style to match your company's voice, your company's brand. We've come up with a lot of out-of-the-box solutions, but take the time to make Service Desk meet your own style. That could be really corporate, or that could be really loose. It's totally up to you. Play with automation. Now, automation is a very powerful framework inside Jira Service Desk. You can use it to drive conditional logic for notifications. You can use it to automate tasks that your teams are already doing. So your agents might be crafting really personalized email, and you could give them that time back by codifying the rules that they use and putting that in the system. And for the customer portal, less is more. So always ask for the minimum amount of information that you need to get started on a request. If your request form has 10 fields, chances are you don't need all 10 of them. Try and figure out what the minimum set is so that you make it easy for your customers to fill out. Now, this is going to sound cliche, but knowledge is power. Right? Give your customers the ability to save time by solving their own problems. And in order to do that, you really need to invest time to write really succinct, sharp articles that solve their problem. You don't want to be writing reams of documentation. And finally, make it your own. We put in a lot of effort to allow you to customize the portal. The portal should really be an extension of your brand. So customize the language, the colors, the theming. Do all of that to match your style. Now looking beyond, think about opportunities for embedding the portal on your intranet, on websites, on web applications, to give your customers the access to in-context help. Browse the marketplace for apps that help you extend Jira Service Desk to other channels like voice, chat, social media, CRM, and more. And perhaps come up with your own custom integrations directly using the Jira Service Desk APIs to really deliver that amazing experience. You guys are all in the driver's seat, so now go on and deliver that amazing customer experience. Thanks.